Good morning. It is 11:11 a.m. on Sunday, March 15th, 2026. Welcome to Mobile Metron. I'm coming to you live from Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's Eastern Standard Time here. And hey, Ed, we're right up the road from you. I see you on here. Who else is on here this morning? I see some eyeballs popping up. And we're in our hotel room, and we've already packed up and ready to go. As soon as I'm through teaching, we'll get on the road. But we've had a nice little weekend getaway. I see Ken Marshall here. He's in the next room. And not the next, we have a suite with 2 rooms in it. We're not staying in separate rooms. Sounded like I had you staying in a separate room. Hey, Lynette. Good morning. Buenos dias. Let's see who else is on. Hey, Roz. Thank you. Hey, Roz, thanks to you and Freddie for coming to Mom's service on Monday. Hey, Patty. Hey, Rhonda, thanks for coming to Mom's service. Appreciate it. For those of you that don't know, my mom passed away 2 weeks ago, and her celebration of life was this past Monday on the 9th. And I'm going to say, hey, Beth. I'm going to say some things about that, but I'm going to incorporate it into my teaching. While you're logging on, let me say a couple of things that are announcements. Most of you know this by now. Hey, Michelle. We're not in the Atlanta Theater anymore. Hey, Avery. And I saw, hey, Lisa. Judah had posted picture of some friends of his taking down all the equipment. He's got to store that. I'm not sure exactly what he's going to do. He's still pastoring his church, the Movement in Conyers. Hey, Heather, thanks for coming to the service. I appreciate it. Hey, Brenda, thanks for what you posted today. That will continue. He's been doing 2 things, pastoring the church and managing the Atlanta Theater. His lease is up there, so I'm not exactly, hey Tricia, I'm not exactly sure what he's going to be doing. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be doing. The reason I bring that up is he's been our landlord for the last 3 years. And I am building a studio into my house, and it does have the capacity for studio audience. I'm not exactly sure yet what I'm going to do with that. It has some, it looks really great, and I love it. And I definitely will be doing live broadcasts from in there. As to whether I'm going to open that up to the public, I don't know. There's some logistical things I've got to figure out, not the least of which is public restrooms. So I'll know in a few weeks. One thing's for sure, we have Meditation Weekend number 28 coming up in April, just a few weeks. The first weekend of April, the 4th and the 5th, and that is Easter weekend. We are going to Jekyll Island. Hey, Sonia, thanks to you and Reggie for coming Monday. I appreciate it. I think this is our 6th one that we've done on Jekyll Island, and because it is Easter weekend, we're going to be observing the Christian rites of communion and water baptism. I have a little bit different take on them now than I did back in the day. And yeah, I'm ready for it too, Ed. So whatever I'm going to do officially about Metron Community will definitely be the weekend following that. Right now, I've got a full day tomorrow. I've got all kind of things going on, and it will happen in the right time. Hey, Denise. Someone had asked, does this mean there's no more Metron Community? Absolutely not. The Metron Community is bigger than a geographical location. And so right now I'm very focused on the Meditation Weekend. If you've never been to one of these, you should definitely come. And Jekyll Island is amazing. If you want information, you can scroll up to my cover photo, and in the copy up there, there's the information about that. You can tailor make this if you want to turn it into a little vacation for yourself. We've done 27 of these, and I love the way that we do them. They're not an official retreat where we sell tickets and have management priorities. This is very different, and it's worked. Every one of these that we've done have just been miraculous. Yes, you're right, Rhonda. This is Metron. Metron's wherever we are, and so definitely find out about it and come to this one. My birthday is the 3rd, which will be on a Friday. So when these weekends are always, we do a sunset meditation on Saturday night and a sunrise meditation on Sunday morning. Hey, Mr. Danny, thank you, you and Gloria, for coming Monday. I appreciate it. And so we always come down the Friday night before. So since that Friday night will be my birthday, any of you that are there, you're welcome. I don't have anything planned. We'll just get together and we'll go somewhere for dinner. Since that's all that weekend, and it will work out. One thing I've learned is, I did a little live stream Friday before we drove up here, and I was talking about how dealing with God or the universe is very similar to the way you create things through AI, but you also have to prompt it. That's the way I see manifestation working now. It's like you definitely allow for the supernatural and for God to do exceedingly abundantly above all you can ask or think. But you also have to prompt it. You also have to, things don't just happen on their own. It is you and God working together. Yeah, it's going to be good, Rosalind. I don't know where we're going to go, but we'll do something. I don't care if we pick up pizzas and go out on the beach. That would be great with me. I'd love that. Yeah, it's actually a pretty good idea. Why don't we do it? What? I know. I just thought that just came from the Holy Ghost. I think that'd be easier than trying to get a room somewhere. Mr. Marshall's in there chiming in, trying to get some screen time. But yes, that is a good idea. Maybe we should do that. Let's just do, rather than trying to get a number for a table in some room, because Jekyll doesn't have that many restaurants, so that actually might be a good idea. So that's good. Anyway, that's coming up. Yeah, isn't that a great idea? And Tricia, you had mentioned before about, I don't know what the lunar calendar is going to be like, but you had mentioned before about doing one around the moon. So that actually that's a good idea. And when you're on the beach, you don't have the other places on Jekyll. At night you have to really deal with gnats and stuff, but that's not an issue on the beach. So we should do that. Yeah, I think so too, Roz. That's a good idea. So that seemed, I can tell from all the hearts coming up, that seems like in the book of Acts where it seemed good to us and to the Holy Ghost.
Light sparkles that run down the beach.
Ken just said light spark. I am trying to teach in here. Would you settle down? He just said light sparklers and run up and down the beach. Like, okay, are you through now?
Let your light shine.
Oh, Jesus, help me. Where did all that? You've been so quiet all morning. Where did all this come from? You just waited. Hey, Nadine. Anyway, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll do that. So let me get into the I'm not even going to do breath work right now. I want to talk. So I speak into this atmosphere and I say, let there be light. All right. Tricia says sparklers, yes. All right, no more. I'm trying to teach now. Y'all settle down. So what I want to talk about today is a passage that I've referred to a lot, but I want to turn the diamond a little bit and let the light hit another facet. It's the story. It's in Mark chapter 9, and oh Lord! All right, okay, Ed. Does anybody else have glitter or spark? Get it out of your system. Whatever else you're gonna say about glitters or sparklers. Are you all done now? I should have never said that. No, you started that.
You did?
All right, everybody through? All right, right here. Yes, this is definitely Metron community. So Mark chapter 9, it's the story of the man who brought his, the scriptures say demon-possessed son. All right, we're not talking about parties right now. Everybody settle down. Just no more party talk. I'm trying to teach. Good Lord, y'all are like children. Okay, everybody done? Ed's done. Everybody's done. Okay, no more party talk. We'll have plenty of time. We're not leaving tomorrow, so y'all settle down. Good Lord, everybody must be really ready to get out of town. Okay, so in Mark chapter 9, it says the demon-possessed son. Did he have a demon, or did he have epilepsy, or some brain trauma that caused seizures? I don't know. To me, it's immaterial. I don't get lost in the weeds of legalistic interpretation. I always go for what's the purpose of the story. Do I believe there was literally an ark that had 2 termites and 2 antelopes and 2 kangaroos? No, that's implausible to me. That 2 penguins from the North Pole got on an ice floe and went to Mesopotamia to be on Noah's Ark. When you get lost in the weeds of literal interpretation, that's when the letter kills. The Spirit only gives life in the flexibility of open interpretation. The Bible is Eastern thought. Jesus was an Eastern teacher. So even the Old Testament, a lot of things, those stories are metaphors. They were Hebrew fables that were woven into a narrative that had a universal appeal to it. So, and if you don't believe that way, fine, namaste. I have retired from trying to convince legalists to walk in the Spirit. If you want to walk in the letter it up. I'm a spirit man, and people who live by the letter don't understand spiritual teaching. So that's why I don't waste my time. Letter people need to find letter people. Spirit people need to find spirit people. The International Standard Version says the written text kills, but the Spirit gives life. I'm more about life than I'm about death. So in the story, there's quite a few instances of Jesus doing healings in the 4 Gospels that we still have from the Council of Nicaea. There were originally 300 Gospels, but what we have is 4, and I'm happy to work within that framework. I do not think those 66 books that we know as the Protestant canon is the definitive Word of God, but that's what I know, and so that's ground zero for me. I'm always going to use that, although I see it very differently than I would have at the beginning of my ministry 54 years ago. Which is what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to evolve. You're not supposed to stay exactly the same. So in this story, Jesus hears there's kind of an argument going on between, I guess, where his disciples were. There was a crowd around him. So Jesus goes toward where the argument is, and he says, "What's going on here?" And so this man says, "I brought my son to your disciples because he has a demon that makes him foam at the mouth and go into seizures, and he throws himself into the fire." I don't think he was technically, maybe he was, I don't know. I don't pick up that he was specifically suicidal. I think this was in a time where there was an open fire in a house all the time. Hey, Howard. And it was just a hazard that people had to live with. So if you had a child that was prone to seizures, it's very possible they could have thrown themselves into the fire. Or maybe he was suicidal. I don't know. But the point is, the man says, "I brought my son to your disciples, and they tried to cast this demon out of him, and they couldn't do it." And so Jesus rebukes them and he says, oh, you generation of, whatever he says. And I mean, Jesus was cranky with his disciples a good bit of the time. The idea that Jesus was just patting them on the back and telling them how wonderful they were, it's not supported from the Gospels that we have. He was rebuking them quite a bit. I personally would have been way, oh, are you there, Howie? That's cool. I love Forge Theater. What was I saying? Where was I? Okay, everybody stop talking to me because I gotta stay on track. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, the point is, does anybody remember what I was just saying just a second ago? I was talking about cranky Jesus, Avery. And again, thank you. Yes, Ed, you're right. What I was going to say is, I've always felt like I would have been way too sarcastic to have been one of the original 12. I'm sure I would have gotten in trouble all the time, as many of his disciples did. Okay, so here's the point. Jesus says, he says, bring the boy to me. And you know the story, how the man says, Jesus says, how long has he been like this? And he says, since he was a child. And he kind of gives Jesus a snapshot of what life has been like with this, not just special needs child, but like really self-destructive child. And the man, the way I hear it is the man is exhausted and frustrated. And he says, if you can do anything, help us. And then Jesus says, if you can believe, all things are possible. And then the man says, well, I do believe, but help my unbelief. And then while this interaction's going on, the kid falls on the ground and goes into a seizure. And so Jesus, the way the writer says it, commands the spirit to come out. I've talked about this passage a lot, but I want to bring it up today for this cause, for this reason. If you reduce their interaction, what Jesus said to the man, what the man said to Jesus, if you said, how can you reduce what they said to one another into 4 words? Make it concise. What did he say? What did he say? The 4 words that the man says, that Jesus says to the man, if I was going to, like different translations say it different ways, but if I was going to say, what's the essence of what Jesus said? It would be, if you can believe. If you can believe. If I was going to reduce what the man said back to Jesus to 4 words, his response would be, I do believe, but. It's if you can believe. The response, I do believe, but. Both of those phrases are predicated on a conjunction. Now, if you're in my age group, you can't hear the word conjunction without thinking of Schoolhouse Rock, conjunction, junction, what's your function? If is a conjunction, and is a conjunction, but is a conjunction. There's a few others, but the reason you hear that phrase, no ifs, ands, or buts, if, and, but are the most predominant conjunctions. And but can be used 2 different ways. But can also be, I think it's a preposition if you use it like as you're saying, except for, but for. All right. And I want to read this to you. If is what they call a subordinating conjunction. It's used to introduce a condition, meaning one clause depends on another. It sets up scenarios, hypotheses, or requirements for an event to occur, commonly used to indicate that something might happen depending on another. In other words, the if there, it's all of this thing that Jesus is saying can be boiled down to the conjunction if. This is all if you can believe. But is not a subordinating conjunction, it's a coordinating conjunction. A coordinating conjunction is a word which joins together two clauses which are both equally important. Now let me tell you why that's significant. In other, not in all of them, but in the other instances of Jesus healing someone in the Gospels, there was always strong affirmation. Like the woman with the issue of blood says, if I can touch the hem of his garment, I shall be made well. She didn't, like she's certain. Well, the scripture says a certain woman, and you can read a lot into the word certainty there, even though that's not really what that was saying. The centurion says, speak a word only, and my servant shall be healed. So any of you that ever rode the charismatic wave of faith teaching know that we used to say all the time, faith is based on affirmative. It's based on will and shall. Our concept in faith teaching was all about standing on the word. I'm not moved by what I see. Abraham staggered not at the promise of God. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Everything's will and shall. And that's what sets this story apart, because Jesus doesn't say to the man, you must believe. Now, later on, he says anything is possible to them that believe. But to him personally, he says if. You know, Paul wrote to the Romans and he says, if it be possible, as much as lies in you, live peaceably with all men. The assumption is it may not be possible. So what sets this story apart is Jesus, the emphasis is on the conjunction if you can believe. In other words, like when the man says, hey kid, turn that thermostat up just a little bit. I got it too cold in here, please. He doesn't, like when the man says, if you can do anything, help us. Jesus isn't indignant. He doesn't say, what? How dare you question me? Of course I can heal him. Do you not know my record? No, Jesus just says, if. There's so much implied in that word if. There's compassion. It's Jesus saying, I know it's a lot. You've been through a lot. I don't even know if you've got it in you to believe. So what he says, this is a very, even though Jesus was divine, he was also human. This is a very human response. This is a high priest who's touched with the feelings of my infirmities. Because he says, I don't know if you can believe. I don't know if you got it in you. You know, there are things you go through in life that you fall down and you get up again, you fall down, you get up again, you fall down, you get up again. And then there's sometimes you have a fall and you just say, I don't have it in me to fight this time. I mean, I don't know. And Jesus is saying, he's allowing this for this man. He says, if you can believe. In other words, I don't know, you've been through a lot. You know, just raising children is a lot. But raising a child that you've got to watch all the time because you don't know if they're going to be throwing themselves into a fire has got to be one of the most exhausting things I can imagine. I mean, you know, I've been taking care of my mom for the last year, but I wasn't having to be 24-hour vigilant. I mean, I wrote something when I came up here Friday night about how I'm having to deprogram from constantly checking my phone and thinking about, did I take care of everything? But it's not like I've just been having to sit and look at her bed 24 hours. But if you lived in the house where there's an open fire, which there would have been at this time, and you have this child that at any point could go into a seizure and possibly attempt suicide, it's got to be beyond exhausting. I mean, talk about literally being at the end of your rope. So for Jesus to say, if you can believe, there's a lot of compassion in that. He's saying, I understand this is difficult. And then the man meets him back. This is a very human exchange. Because the man doesn't say, why, yes, Jesus, I absolutely believe. This man's exhausted. And he says, you know, I do believe, but you're going to have to help me with my unbelief. Now, let me tell you how this factors into what I want to say about my mom's service on Monday. And I've already posted pictures of it and written about it. And, you know, different people respond differently to my sharing intimate details of my life. You either understand that or you don't. And as I've told you before, I'm not incapable of taking it too far, and I have on occasion. But I also know that my anointing only works in transparency. And it's an occupational hazard that sometimes I am prone to overshare, because when you open the floodgates, it's very hard to manage the river. Once you open the river, once the viaduct is removed and the river of anointing flows, it flows. And sometimes you let it go. And that's something I've had to contend with my entire ministry, but it's the only way I can minister. I can't, anything else, any other way would be incompatible with authenticity. And what I see, when Jesus said the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, the emphasis is on the me. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me. It's upon my personality. It's upon my uniqueness. It's upon my mode of communicating. So you can say, well, you're just self-serving. You know, you wouldn't be the first person to accuse me of that. So whatever. I'm just telling you, at this age of where I am on my journey as an elder in the house of God, I know that I have to share the way that I share. And however anyone else interprets it, no matter how close they are to me, so be it. It is what it is. So, having said that, you know, I've been taking care of my mom for the last year. I've really been taking care of my parents for the last 12 years. 2 of those years, yes, Jared lived in the house with my mom and was a huge help to me. Absolutely. And I will never forget him for that. And he not only did that with my mom, he did it with his other grandmother who passed away just 2 or 3 months ago. So he, you know, I'm not diminishing anything that he's done. But it's basically been on me for the last 12 years as an only child, and it's fine. And I rose to the occasion, and it's all good. When my mom's twin brother passed, he passed on New Year's Day of this year, which was 58 days before my mom passed. And so on New Year's Day, Ken and I went over to my cousin LaDonna lives kind of across the street from where we live. And so New Year's Eve, we had gone over there. Don was still breathing at that point. And I told LaDonna, I said, look, if he goes in the middle of the night, just go ahead and call me. I would just like to know. I'd like to know when he goes. So I didn't hear anything through the night. But later that morning, around 10 o'clock, Ken was out. I think he was mowing the lawn. And she FaceTimed me. And I could tell the way she was crying. I said, did he just go? And she said, yes. And so I said, I'm coming right now. So I ran over there. So we, you know, had an emotional time, and you know, you can imagine what that was like. So then I thought, oh, I guess I need to tell my mom. So I walked back over. My mom was standing at the door, and she said, did he go? And I said, yes, he did. And I was waiting for some emotional response, and she was very matter of fact about it. And so I'm trying to think of, what to say. I'm sure she don't read into that. I'm not accusing her of anything. I'm just saying that's the way she responded. So I walked in and we were standing there in the foyer of the house, and I said, it's interesting. I said, your sister Myrtle passed on Christmas Day, and Dawn passed on New Year's Day. And honestly, I was thinking she was going to say, well, I might go on Valentine's Day. I mean, I wasn't pushing her toward that. I just know the way she thinks, and I thought that's what she was going to say. But she said, well, in another 10 years, I'll be gone. So, when I said that before, everybody laughed. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of that. Very realistically, truth be told, I had to process that. Because after she said that, I thought, well, you know what? She might live another 10 years. I mean, she'd be 97. That's not that much older than her sister Ernestine is, who's still very much alive. And so I had to get my head around that. I took it so seriously that she said that later that night we talked about it. And I said, Ken, I don't know. I was thinking Mom's passing was going to be very connected to Don's, but I may be calling this wrong. And I said, she could live. I said, I'll be, in 10 years, I'll be 78, nearly 79. You'll be 7. We're talking about what that looks like. And I said, we need to prepare. We may be in this house taking care of her for the next decade. Which, of course, he's like, well, we'll do whatever we have to do. And I knew that's what he would say. But I was having to process that. And then 2 weeks later is when she fell and broke her pelvis. And so for the next 58 days, we were in and out of hospitals, in and out of facilities, in emergency rooms. That just set off a litany of things. Like, she was in the hospital, and then she was put in a facility, and then they found her on the floor unresponsive, and she was back in the emergency. I've been in that emergency room at Emory Decatur so much, I know a lot of the people there by name now. When I walk in, I say, hey, so-and-so, because I've just been with them all night long on several occasions. And so I've lost track of the days, but some days later, the facility where she was called me and said, we found your mom somehow she got out of the bed and was unresponsive. So she's back. I said, where are you taking her? So I went and met them at the emergency rooms there all night again. And so she was there for, I think, 11 days maybe, and was unconscious the entire time until the last couple of days. And she had tested positive for COVID, and there was a whole thing that happened there. And then she was released into hospice care, but the bed was still available at the facility. So she went back there and was there another, 2 weeks. I can't remember. It was 58 days of being in one of those two facilities with her. And during that time, I've been around death and dying my entire life. I remember, the earliest I remember seeing somebody die was when I was 4. We lived a church right down the street from here. Not down the street, but probably 30 minutes from here. My dad pastored a church in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. And there were a lot of elderly people in that church. So my dad was doing funerals all the time. Years ago, I had to go back into that funeral home not far from here. And I knew immediately where the bathroom was. Because, I remember, some of you, this is going to make your head explode. But I was so used to being in funeral homes. Because back then, you would go for visitation the night before. And I remember, going, it was a big funeral home. Back then, I think it was the only one they had in Soddy Daisy. And so in those parlors, there would be sometimes 4 or 5 different people. And I remember going from room to room and jumping up and like holding on to the side of caskets to look up inside of them. I just wasn't afraid because I was so used to it. I remember when I was in school one time, in elementary school, our teacher said something about death, and she said, "How many of you have ever been to a funeral?" And nobody in my class raised their hand. Like it was probably 3rd grade. I couldn't believe it. I thought, none of y'all have been to. I mean, I go to funerals all the time. I sang at funerals, and I'm not trying to be morbid. I'm just saying, if I seem not blasé, but very matter of fact about death, I've just been around it a lot. And I remember, I wouldn't know the woman's name, but my dad pastored a church not far from here, and Sister so-and-so, whoever was there, was going home to be with the Lord. And I remember everybody went to her house, and I remember people in her room crying and praying and speaking in tongues and singing hymns. And she was apparently getting close to crossing over. And I remember my mom said, because I've got a very good memory. I was 4. I remember my mom saying to me, "You need to go outside on the front porch," because she wanted to spare me, watching somebody die. So I walked out on the porch of this country house, and I went right to the window and stood. I mean, the window was open. I still stood there and watched. I mean, I walked outside, but I was actually closer to her looking through the window than I was when I was in the room. So I was right there, I mean, this far away from her, when I heard might have been my dad. I remember somebody saying, "She's gone." And I remember, family members howling with grief. And like it was a very emotional experience. But I wasn't afraid of it. At the end of To Kill a Mockingbird, when Scout looks up and they don't know who brought Jim to the house after he'd been knocked unconscious. And Scout looks up and she goes, "Well, there he is." And it was Robert Duvall. It was the first movie role he ever played, where he played Boo Radley. And she goes, "Hey, Boo." And she goes over and takes him by the hand. And the whole point of the phrase "To Kill a Mockingbird" is it's about not being afraid of somebody that's different. Like white people assuming that all black men rape white women, because that's what largely the story was about. The Trump administration has banned To Kill a Mockingbird from public schools, which is unimaginable to me, but it is what it is. And the way Scout goes over and takes Boo Radley's hand, and she's not afraid of him, and she walks him back home. That's kind of the way I grew up around death and dying. So I think some people might have misinterpreted how matter of fact I was about my mom's passing, but I just know the signs. And she, when she's had been seeing people appear, family members appear. She saw my dad so much in this last year. There was one night, I was up in the middle of the night. I could hear her downstairs, and I went downstairs and, "Mom, what are you doing up?" And she said, "I'm talking to your dad." And she points to her chair. And I said, "Mom, Dad's not there. Dad's in heaven. You need to go back to bed." And she said, "You don't see him sitting right there?" And she was so convinced of it that, I honest to God, looked at waiting for him to materialize. She said, "You don't see him right there." I said, "No, ma'am, I don't, but apparently you do." I said, "He must be there." And so, we've had a year of her having visitations from people from the other side, which, those of you that have been around that know that usually happens when somebody starts seeing a loved one appear. You think, "Oh, their time is at hand." I've been doing this for a full 12 months now. It's not that I'm just trying to get rid of my mom. It's just, she's just been way on the edge of the river than my Uncle Don was, way more. Because I asked LaDonna, I said, did your dad say that he saw people showed up? And she said a little bit the day before he died. Mom was seeing him constantly. And, you know, a lot of times when somebody hallucinates, I think it's not really a hallucination. They're seeing into another dimension. So, and when Mom was in the hospital, that got really cranked up. I know I've told this already, but you know, she said, your dad's outside in the cab waiting for us. Well, for me, when she said that, I thought, well, she's probably, the one night she said it, she had so convinced me she was about to go that I took a video because the kids couldn't come up because of the COVID restriction. So I did a little video. I said, Mom, I said, tell Jared you love him. I went through each of them, even her great-grandchildren. And she did. She said, and as soon as it was over, her head dropped, and she totally looked to me like she had I thought, well, that's it. She left. Ken wasn't in the room. I was so sure that she had gone. I just sat there for a minute and looked at her, and I said, finally, a few minutes later, I said, Mom, are you still here? And she started breathing, and she was still there. So for 58 days, we did that, you know, where I thought, okay, she went now. And then even when she got in hospice, on at least 3 occasions, the hospice nurse called and said, I really think your mom's going today. And they were completely wrong. The hospice had sitters with her 24 hours a day. And one of some sitters, and don't be offended, I'm not trying to be, I'm not making fun of this in any way, and I know this is politically incorrect, but the Jamaican lady that was waiting with her, she's sitting there with the Bible, and this woman had a real strong presence. And one night we were there, and I said, what do you think? I said, you do this all the time. Do you think she's really close to the end or not? And she said, your mother, she's very strong. She's very strong. She's fighting. And I thought, okay, yes, she is. And then one night, this was when she was in the facility, and I would go visit her. She was in a wheelchair, and they brought her out one day, and I had a really good talk with her. It was kind of like a closure kind of talk, and I sort of reviewed her life, and I said, Mom, you had a really good life, and I reminded her of things she had forgotten, and I said, you know, you've been a good mom, and I love it. I mean, I had several occasions to say that to her, at least 3. And I said, you've had a really good life and all that kind of stuff. And the way we told each other goodbye, I swear I walked out of there thinking probably the next call I get is, you know, she'll be gone. So a few hours later, I see their number come up, and I thought, oh, this is it. She's gone. So I answer, and it's the physical therapist. And she said, hey, Mr. Swilley, I just want you to know, your mom took 9 steps a little while ago. She got out of her wheelchair and took 9 steps. And she said, she says you won't believe her if she tells you. So she wanted me to tell you. I said, wow, okay. I said, sure, let me talk to her. I said, Mom, I said, you got out of the wheelchair? She said, yes. She took several steps. And I said, okay, well, please understand. It's not that I'm disappointed. I'm just very surprised. And even to the point, I told Ken, I said, that night, I said, the physical therapist called and said, Mom got out of her wheelchair and took some steps. So I don't know. I said, we might not be as close to the end as I have thought we are. And he said, what will you do if you have to bring her back here? I said, I don't know. This house isn't wheelchair accessible. I said, I'll just cross that bridge when I get to it. I mean, I can't imagine how we could do it. Where I'd even set up a bed, but, you know, we'll do what we have to do. He did it with his mom. You know, she died at the house. So I'm saying all that to say, I've not only had 58 days of false alarms. I've had like a year of it. I mean, there was one day I walked downstairs and she's sitting at the breakfast table, completely collapsed in her chair. The food is on the floor. And I thought, she's gone. And I stood there for a minute and said, Mom, and she sat up again. So I went through lots of trial runs for when she actually did pass. Now I said, what's that got to do with this man saying this to Jesus? And if you can believe, and I do believe, but. All right. I had lots of people, some of you who are on here were telling me, what you thought about different things. And I honestly stopped calling it. I mean, I thought, I'm clearly A, not in charge of this, and B, I must not be as perceptive as I think I am, because I thought from my expertise being around death and dying my entire life, I wouldn't even know how many people I've seen die in my life. I've been so many. But I thought, man, I'm calling this one wrong. She's unlike other people I've dealt with. So one night, Rutherford called me, Robert Rutherford. And, I've known Robert since 1981. And I'm not saying everything that pops out of Robert's mouth is prophetically accurate. I only know the times he's spoken in my life, he's been unusually spot on. I mean, pretty much batted 1,000 prophetically. And so he called one night and he said, I was praying about your mom. Like, what's going on? Why does she keep putting her toe in the river and then getting out? And Ken, that might be them. Can you get that?
No, 1 o'clock still good with us.
Tell them it may be before 1, but
That's what we had, maybe a little before 1, but that's what we had requested was 1 o'clock. Okay, thank you. Bye.
we asked for a late checkout. They said that's okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Robert called and he said, I was praying, whatever he does. I don't know. I guess we all still pray. I'm not sure what. Yes, he was praying. And he said, I heard the word, she's negotiating. She's negotiating. And I thought, okay, well, that resonates, but negotiating what? And so, finally on the 27th, I'm not going to go through all that story again, but the hospice did call and say, I really do think she's going this time. And I said, what's different than the other times you've told me? And she said, I can't even find a blood pressure now. I said, okay, we'll be right there. And it worked. It was beautiful the way it worked out. Ken just happened to have taken that day off. So he was with me. I had about 2 hours with her to play music. And there was no frantic goodbye. Ken had already told me, he said, look, if they call in the middle of the night, tell me, because I'm going to go with you to the facility. And I said, okay. But it wasn't like that at all. It wasn't rushed. Was it a river runs through it? They said he died a beautiful death. It was like that. That's what it was like. It's like she was laying there unconscious for 2 hours while I played her music. And then when I played my dad singing, she opened her eyes and she passed laying there making eye contact with me, listening to some songs I knew that would definitely resonate with her. So, I mean, when I say I walked her all the way to the gate, I mean, I walked her to the gate and saw it open and click behind her. Okay. What's that got to do with negotiation? Okay. When the man says to Jesus, if you can do anything, help us. And Jesus is not offended by the if. He doesn't say, how dare you? He just says, well, he puts the onus back on the man, if you can believe. I have, one of the platforms I have is Disney Plus. And the thing I like to watch on Disney Plus, I love the animated movies from my era. I don't like anything past Little Mermaid. I don't really relate to that because it wasn't from my childhood. But the early ones, like Sword in the Stone and Cinderella, and like all of them, some of them are problematic, I know. But I'm just saying, from my standpoint, of an observer, I love to watch them. They're sort of like comfort food for me. Lady and the Tramp, or Pinocchio, even Jungle Book, any of that era. And one thing I love about them is so many of those fairy tales are about. And let me say, these fairy tales are very sanitized from the original Grimm's version. The Grimm's version were horrible, violent, and so these are very sanitized. What we see Disney-fied, but so many of them will have a song about, like, When You Wish Upon a Star from Pinocchio, or is it Cinderella? A dream is a wish your heart makes, and they nearly all will have this line, like something like, no matter how your heart is grieving, if you keep on believing. There's this whole thing about if you can believe, when you wish upon a star. It's this idea that miracles are possible if you can believe for them. The downside to if you can believe is it puts a lot of responsibility on you. Back in the faith movement days, we used to say, well, I guess that person died because they didn't have enough faith. And it's a lot of, I used to hear people say, instead of trying to have big faith, have faith in a big God. Okay, I understand what you're saying. Problem with that is some people have had faith with a big God and things didn't turn out for them the way that they wanted. I mean, I'm telling you, I believe that you have what you say, and all that, I was raised on by stripes I'm healed and all that kind of stuff. I also have seen people who said that right to their dying breath and still flatlined. I remember back in the Word of Faith days, I used to hate having to do funerals. And I used to envy the Baptists who would just say, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. We came from a standpoint of, they're healed in Jesus' name, they're going to make it. And people would get really mad at me if their loved one died. I can't tell you how many people left the church over the years because they said, you said she was going to live and she didn't live. And so, there's a part of me that used to hate that posture. I would rather just say, hey, who knows? It's a crapshoot. Yeah, you can pray, but they're going to go when they're going to go. And in some kind of strange way, I've kind of come full circle to that, but not really. And that's where it comes back to the if you can believe. And I do believe, but, I loved everything about my mom's service. Thank you, Leslie, for what you just posted right before I went on here. That was beautiful. And thank you for driving up and for what you shared. It really touched me. And one thing that's interesting, even at my dad's service 6 years ago, I had my Uncle Don speak right after my first cousin's husband. My Uncle Don, super progressive, super liberal, on Facebook all the time, bashing Donald Trump. I had Jensen Franklin, who's married to my first cousin, who literally, they flew from the Oval Office. He had just been with Trump and came to the service. And I had Don and Jensen. That's two sides of my family. But I thought, man, talk about a contrast. But it was a beautiful service, and they both loved my dad. And they didn't talk about MAGA. They talked about what they loved about my dad. And that's what brought us together. In a very similar way, that happened at my mom's service. my cousin Bishop D.E. opened up, and D.E. of all the ministers in the family, D.E. and I are the most on the same page of anybody. I mean, we're the on more than one occasion we have said, we've sung the song "Stuck in the Middle" with you. I'm not calling family members clowns, but like with clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, here I am stuck in. We're talking about Christianity in general. And so his opening prayer was, very universalist. He said namaste and ashe and Christ consciousness. And somebody asked me, do you think that's provocative for your other family members that don't believe that way? I'm like, no, that's the way he expresses himself, and he knows that's what I believe. And it was fine. He did exactly what I wanted him to do. And I thought what he shared about Mom and Dawn being the yin and yang, I thought it was brilliant and very well thought out. And so no, I loved it. And then I had my other cousins who kept reminding us that Jesus is coming soon. And I thought, of course they were going to say that, because that's what they deeply believe. And I wouldn't expect any different from them. And I loved them. I mean, they raised me. And so I was talking to Robert again later about the service. And he said, we were talking about how beautiful it was. He said it was literally the epitome of inclusion, because, nobody was mad. I even sang a song that was technically about the rapture, because I knew my mom would love that. And it was like there was no agendas. It was just like, yeah, I know you believe that way and you believe that way, but we're all here because we love my mom, and it's fine. And we still, we're still there for each other. And he said, Robert said, the old me would have gotten up and said, I want to say something. I just say, namaste, Jesus is coming soon. He said, but that would have sounded too sarcastic. And he said, I don't even feel that way now. I said, exactly. That's the way I am now. When my cousins are saying, remember, Jesus is coming soon. I'm like, okay, great. That's awesome. Is that what I believe? I believe we are the second coming of Christ. I don't think it's an event, but I also understand why you think that way, and that's certainly a take on it. What's that got to do with the man? It's all about negotiation. Everything's about negotiation. When Robert said your mom is negotiating, guess what? We're all negotiating. Even, I've got a friend, I'll just go ahead and say it because my heart is pure on this. But the person who introduced me to Robert Rutherford was John Alexander. They were both in my Bible school. I ran a branch of Norval Hayes' New Life Bible School for 3 years, and that's how I met them. And the three of us were a threefold cord for a very long time. And then years ago, Robert came out and I came out. Our journeys were very different, but yes, it put the third strand of us through some real changes. And so our relationship has been very different. Robert and I continue to talk on a continuum, but John didn't. And I'm not mad at him. It is what it is. I understand our coming out probably made things very difficult for him. I understand. And he has not evolved exactly the way that we have theologically, and that's fine too. And I looked out in the congregation, and there he was with his wife Janie, and I could tell he was super supportive. Everything I was saying, he was like shaking his head big and laughing at the funny parts. And I thought, you know what? I'm glad they're here. This is great. This is somebody I've loved for a very long time. And so at our reception, a couple of people came up to me and they said, Did you know John Alexander's going to be at this reception? Do you want us to ask him to leave? I said, no, I invited him. It's fine. I'm glad he's here. And what you saw in those pictures with us hugging each other and smiling, that is true. But Bishop, he's MAGA. That's not what that day was about. That day was about relationships and negotiating. And let me tell you something. If you don't learn flexibility, the letter's gonna kill you. You're gonna have to learn the ifs and the buts. Am I gonna be healed? I don't know. If you can believe. And you can say back, yeah, I do believe, but I understand the but. Do you understand? It's not, nothing's definitive. We're all figuring it out. Our prayer, you know what prayer really is? You go read the first chapter of Isaiah. Come, let us reason together. Prayer is in some ways an argument, a negotiation. My mom negotiated. I think she was literally trying to decide if she was going to stay here for more years or go on. And whatever, I had finally surrendered to whatever she chose. And this is what I'm going to end with this. This is what's really cool. Ken took his vacation days just kicked in. So he took the week off, and we've got all kinds of projects going on in the house. And I think initially he was just going to take off and finish some painting and work in the yard and do it, because that's his love language, as he wants to do. And we did do a lot of stuff this week, but also we hadn't been out of town in a long time. So I made reservations for us to come up here, and I had this past Friday was super synchronistic. Like everything just, I won't go into details, but just everything was just in a flow, in a zone, just nearly magical. And the place that I don't even know how many times we've been up here, but it's been a while. And the place that I thought I was reserving was not where I reserved. So all the way I'm driving up here, I had this picture in my head. This place is right next to the Walnut Street Bridge. Well, we can go out there if the weather's nice. We can have dinner overlooking the river. I had this whole picture in my head of we're going to be right there at the bridge. We love that area of town. It's going to be great. We'll park our car. We don't have to drive anywhere. We can walk wherever we want to go. So GPS is taking us here, and this hotel's great. We've stayed here before, but this is not what I wanted. So when we pulled in, I thought, oh my God, this isn't where I thought we were going. This is the Indigo. I was wanting the Edwin, and it's too late. I've already paid the money. We're here. And he was like, it's fine. I said, no, I didn't want it to be fine. I wanted it to be spectacular. I wanted, like, this trip was really significant to me and meaningful. And I wanted us to be wowed by it. And he said, this is great. So he had already made reservations. This restaurant we like. So we're walking. I said, let's walk to dinner. I guess this is it. This is where we're staying, and it's fine. So we sit down, and the waiter, nice young guy, and as I am prone to do, as he's writing our order, I said, oh, I see you're left-handed. I said, so are we. I said, synchronicity. And he said, I love that word. Well, when he said that, we just went into this immediate conversation where he was confirming so many things I was thinking that it was freaking me out. And so, he just stood there for a few minutes, and we went back and forth. It's like he had listened to my teaching. And on several things. And I said, it's interesting some of the stuff that you're saying. I said, because this whole day has been really synchronistic, but where we're staying is not where I thought we were staying. And it's really messed with my mojo, because I thought I was in the zone today, and this is not what I visualized at all. And he said, well, that's where you have to embrace the other word, the opposite of synchronicity. And I said, what? He said, it's surrender. And I said, dude, you say one more thing, you're going to have me crying, because that's exactly where I'm at right now. And to me, that's the if and the but. It's the synchronicity and the surrender. If you can believe. Yeah, I don't know. Can you? There's some days I get up and I'm like, absolutely, I got this. And I'm in the zone, and I hit every red light, and I wad up a piece of paper and throw it over my shoulder, and it ends up in the waste paper basket. I'm just in the zone. I'm walking in the spirit. I'm walking in my intuition. My inner GPS system is it's just cranking. And there's other days where I think, is any of that real? Because if it's real, I'm not in it today. And I've talked about, rebooting your day and all that kind of stuff. And all that's true, but there's some days you're just like, I don't know what the heck's going on. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I'm telling you, Valentine's Day morning, because, we're literally just, is she going? Is she going tonight? Every time the phone rings, I'm like, she's gone. I get up Valentine's Day, because Dawn had died on New Year's Day. So today's Valentine's Day. I go downstairs to make my coffee. I open up and there's a male and a female cardinal literally right outside my window. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, that's Dad coming to get Mom. She's going today, Valentine's Day. That's my spiritual birthday. That sounds right. And so I opened the blinds to get a better picture of them, and the female had flown. And I thought, okay, confirmation, she's going today. And she didn't. So, all right, Bishop, give me a hard and fast rule. Where do we balance the synchronicity with the surrender? I can't tell you that. Your journey is your if. I don't know. I don't know your journey. I do know the hairs of your head are numbered. I know that he knows you're down sitting and you're uprising. I know that there's not a word in your tongue that you speak he doesn't know altogether. All of those things are true. When David said, where can I go from your presence? That's true. We are in the presence of this thing we call God. And if to you that's a Jewish man sitting on a throne, fine. I don't have any issue with that. I'm just not limiting it to that. I'm saying we're all figuring this out. And when the scripture says the just shall live by faith, you know what that means? It means you just keep going. Faith allows for the if. It allows for the I do believe, but. Faith includes conjunctions. And that's okay. You're not being double-minded. You're negotiating. Everything's a negotiation. Everything's putting it out there. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Can you believe? Maybe. Maybe I can believe, but I don't know. Today's different from the way it was yesterday. That's why when you get legalistic, you're just setting yourself up for a fall. Because if you say, I know that I know that I know, maybe you do. There are some situations where I know that I know that I know, but one thing is for sure, this whole thing with my mom's passing, my mom ended up teaching me things in her final hours, probably more than she taught me my entire life, because I just learned a lot about how this whole thing works. And, that's what I'm seeing. And I know I've talked about these things before, but I'm feeling this really strongly today to ask you, if you can believe. Can you? I don't know. I don't know what your journey is. And even if I know your journey, I don't know where you are on it now. There are times in your relationships where you put up with a thing, put up with a thing, put up with a thing. And then there's one time where it flips a switch and you go, I can't do that anymore. I don't know where that is for you. The if is a big if, and I'm very grateful for that if. Thank you, Jesus, for the if. Because Jesus doesn't condemn the man. He just says, if you can believe. And the man says, I do, but my affirmative has a conjunction that connects me to another phrase. Is that being double-minded? No, it's just life. It's the way it works. And can you still believe for miracles? Heck yeah. Every day you should be believing for miracles. I don't know what good things are going to happen to me today. Can I believe today? Yeah, I'm in a pretty good place. I'm in a good state of mind. I can believe for a lot of stuff. I can probably manifest some stuff. Does that mean I'm in charge of everything? Absolutely not. So the if and the but, they're working all the time. Synchronicity and surrender all the time. You've got to figure out the rhythm, the balance. Working out your own salvation is something that you do every day. The concrete never hardens. You're going to be progressing till the minute you leave here. And if my mom's any indication, your negotiation about when you are going to leave goes right up to the end. Honestly, I think she wasn't really going that day until she heard my dad's voice when she opened her eyes. And then I followed it with a song by my Uncle Harry, which was Peace in the Valley, which I don't know if Howie's still online, but he's in Washington. He sent me a picture today from the National Gallery of Art. And it was another take on that painting that's in my foyer that I've talked about. It's sometimes called Peaceable Kingdom. And my mom really trusted Uncle Harry's voice. And when she was looking at me, I said, Mom, do you know who that is? That's Uncle Harry. And she didn't nod, but I could tell she got it. And I played one more song, and through that song, she closed her eyes and left. So I helped her with the negotiation. And I think made her feel safe enough that she could let go and get her new body. And so anyway, I'm going to leave that. I may talk about that some more. I don't know how much I'm going to be on. Once I get the studio set up, I may be on here a lot. But definitely on Sundays at 11 a.m. All right, I got to go. They're going to kick us out of here in a few minutes. But let me know if you got anything out of that. If you want to support Metron community, go to bishinthenow.com, and you can do that. If you want to give to me personally, you don't get tax credit for that, but I have all the cash apps if you want to do that. So I'll go read your comments. And you know what? When it comes to your own negotiation today, trust yourself. Trust your instincts. The fact that Jesus said to the man, if you can believe, he put a lot of confidence in that man. Like you saying, what can you believe for? What's your capacity? And if you can do it, do it. And it's all good. Everything is good. I am very, some people say Zen. I have the peace that passes understanding. I'm not worried about my mom now. I'm having to get a new normal. Used to be not keeping an ear out for her all the time, but it's all good. I don't regret it. I don't even regret anything I've said. I mean, I may have said too much, but I don't regret it because like I said, the dam has to be removed for the river to flow. That's what you get with me. If you prefer guys with a little stream, go with that. If you come to me, you're going to get a river. And the river brings a lot with it. The river's a lot. Okay? I love you very much. I'll read your comments. Go in peace. Until I talk to you again, negotiate.